What's going on, guys? So first, before I begin, I just want to thank everybody for subscribing to my channel. We hit 20 subscribers, and you have no idea, 20, like, so little compared to so many people here on YouTube, but it's a big number for me. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. If you haven't done so, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it. But anyways, here we have another implicit differentiation, and just before I begin, let me go over my notes and make sure that I need to get to this answer here. And, alright, so the first things first. So again, as with every implicit differentiation, the first thing you want to do, or really, the only difference is when you take the derivative. You're taking the derivative of each variable here. However, when you take the derivative of y, you're adding a y prime, or you're multiplying a y prime, all right? So let's get started and see what that looks like. So we'll take the derivative of the first term here, 3x squared. Of course, that is 6x, okay? That is the derivative of 6x. So then you take the derivative. So we're going to write dy dx of 5, or actually, because, well, let's continue writing it. 5xy squared, and then minus the derivative of 4y cubed. So that one's going to be easy. So this one, the reason I didn't write the derivative here is because that one was easy as well. But also the 4y cubed, that's going to be 12y squared. But remember, because it was a y, we're going to be multiplying a y prime. So we're going to have minus 12y squared multiplied by a y prime, and then the derivative of 8 is 0. Okay, so I left here the more not difficult, it's just basically product rule. So we're going to factor out, so we're going to do this one right here first. And we're going to make sure that we highlight everything else because I want to make sure that I do not forget it when I add it. And of course, that's going to be a minus there. So let's do this one in red. The derivative of 5xy squared, so that is just factoring out that 5. I don't know why that parentheses came out that way, but that's basically factoring out that 5. And we're going to go ahead and use product rule, so x will be our f of x, and then we take y squared prime plus y squared, and then times x prime, and then parentheses to close it out. Again, we're just doing the one that I have here underlined. That's going to be 5 parentheses. We take the derivative of y squared, so we leave the x. So again, another y prime that's going to be multiplied, okay, because it's a y. We're taking the derivative of y here. And like I said, this implicit differentiation, multiply that y prime. So we have 2y and then y prime plus y squared, and then that's it. The derivative of x prime is just 1, so we're left with y squared. Okay, now what we could do is let's write everything else that we did. Minus 12y squared times y prime is equal to 0. So what we want to do here is we want to factor out a y prime. So we're going to move everything that is not a y prime or anything that does not have y prime over to the right side where the equal, or where the 0 is. So this looks a little confusing here, but what essentially we're moving is, well, we're going to have to actually distribute the 5 first. So 6x plus 5x is that? Oh, that looks kind of weird. It's actually 10, because we multiply it with the 5 and the 2. That's going to be 10. So it's going to be 10x y prime plus 5y squared minus 12y squared times y prime is equal to 0. Okay, and then what we're moving, I'm going to put this in green, what we're moving is this term here and this term over to the right. Okay, so that means that these two over here, we're actually going to keep there. So let's go write this, the one that I have here underlined in red, keep it here, 10xy y prime minus 12y squared y prime is equal to, and then we have our negative 6x minus 5y squared. Okay, so we're almost done. We're almost done. So what we need to do now is just factor out that y prime on the left side from both of those terms and rewrite the expression here. So we have 10xy minus 12y squared is equal to negative 6x minus 5y squared. Okay, now we can divide by that 10xy minus 12y squared. I'm not going to actually write that down. It's going to waste time, but what we're left with is negative 6x minus 5y squared over 10x y minus 12y squared. And yes, that is what I have here, and this is your final answer. Again, thank you guys so much for 20 subscribers. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one.